Hello, welcome to this PsychBoost video. In this video, we look at the behaviours of a minority which are used to change the views of a majority group. We'll learn some specialist terminology, we'll look at some evaluative research, and suggest ways we can expand our evaluations.
1, 2, 3.
So what does minority influence require? It requires individuals to reject their majority behaviours or belief and be converted to the views of this minority. The minority will have to try and change views via information or social influence. So if they achieve this, it's likely to result in internalization or a permanent lasting changing in beliefs. A minority group changing a majority opinion will start as a slow process. But as this group becomes larger, it's going to attract even more people. It's going to gain legitimacy and it will start to attract people at a faster rate. This is called the snowball effect, and it's how a small minority can, in a relatively short space of time, actually become a majority view, but it will start slowly. There are 3 behaviours that a minority will have to adopt. These behaviours help convince a majority group that a minority group is serious about their beliefs, and those beliefs should be seriously considered. Behaviour 1. This is consistency. The minority need to demonstrate that it's really confident in its view. If they repeat the same message again and again and again, which is called diachronic consistency, the argument will sound more powerful if it's been repeated that many times. Behaviour 2. Commitment. If the minority are willing to suffer for their views, but they still hold on to them, this is likely to cause members of the majority group to take them seriously. This suffering for your views is known as the augmentation principle. Now on the right there's a picture of a burning monk. It's a picture of a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who burned himself on a street in Saigon in 1963. He did this to highlight to the world the Buddhist community were being unfairly treated by the government at the time. The photograph won the 1963 World Press Photo of the Year, and it was so popular that in Europe it was sold as postcards and it was distributed by the Chinese in the millions. Now before this picture, the plight of the Buddhists in Vietnam was quite a small issue. But because the picture was so powerful in demonstrating these Buddhists were so upset they were willing to greatly suffer to get their cause heard, it had a great effect in turning world opinion against the government in Vietnam, and the government in Vietnam fell later that year. President John F. Kennedy said no news picture in history has generated so much emotion around the world as that one, because of course linked to that photograph is the suffering of many millions of Buddhists in that country as well. Behaviour 3. Flexibility. If you're seen as dogmatic, as you're seen as completely inflexible in your views, you're going to lose the ability to be persuasive. You need to at least appear to consider other valid counter-arguments and perhaps slightly compromise. Point 6. While flexibility and consistency, they seem to contradict each other. But in order to seem reasonable and open-minded, as well as having a clear, stable opinion, there does need to be a balance between these 2 factors, although it can be very easy to get it wrong, and too much flexibility will seem that you're not serious about your views. We have supporting research by Muscovy on commitment. What he ran is groups of 4 participants, but then 2 confederates as well, so groups of 6 altogether, were shown 36 blue slides. There were different shades of blue, and there were 2 conditions. In the first, a consistent minority, those 2 confederates, stated that every slide was green. Now this small minority were able to make 32% of the participants give the same answer as this minority on at least one trial, with wrong answers given by participants on 8.4% of all the trials. Now this was compared to only 1.25 when the minority was inconsistent in saying whether it was blue or saying whether it was green. So that consistency was really vital in persuading the majority to side with the minority. However, what these results also mean is 68% of participants never agreed with the minority, even when they were consistent. So perhaps only some people are receptive to minority groups. A second piece of evaluative research, this time by Nemeth. He looked at flexibility. He used groups of 3 participants and 1 confederate, and he looked at 2 conditions. In the first condition, a confederate, the minority, would show inflexibility what they would do is they would argue for a really low level of compensation for a victim of an imaginary ski lift accident, and they just wouldn't change from that level. In the second, the Confederate would show flexibility by raising his offer just slightly. In this flexible condition, the majority was much more likely to lower their compensation level to be a little closer to the Confederate than in this inflexible condition. One way we could criticise this study though, as it was an experimental situation, and the participants were aware the ski lift victim wasn't real and no money really would be paid, we might question the external validity of the experiment. Would, in a real situation, the other participants come down on the level of compensation they would offer? So we could expand minority influence by talking about some of the minorities that have caused real social change due to minority influence. For example, gay rights movement, environmental groups, the suffragettes, and on the right of politics, UKIP. All of these groups have been consistent in their message and in some cases suffered. However, they've eventually caused the social change they aim for. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like. If you haven't already, click subscribe to be updated with new videos. And also, if you have any questions about the content covered during this video, please drop a comment in the comments below. If you see a question and you think you can answer it, then please give that a go as well. Thank you very much. Until the next episode of PsychBoost.